We are so fortunate to present a special talk program featuring director Mr. Masahiro Karasawa from the National Crafts Museum and president and CEO of the Pokemon Company, Mr. Tsunekazu Ishihara. Pokemon and Koge may sound like the most unusual pairing or collaboration, but those of you who have already visited the gallery may have found it that it's absolutely creative and innovative collaboration. Likewise, Mr. Karasawa and Mr. Ishihara may look like an unusual pair of speakers, but I'm sure you will find their conversation fascinating and compelling. We'd like to thank the National Crafts Museum for the curatorial supervision of the exhibition, as well as the Pokemon Company and the Pokemon Company International for their support from the day one. We also want to extend our appreciation to our media sponsor, KCRW and LA East, and promotional partners, Animation East Film Festival and Starbucks Coffee. First, I'd like to welcome Mr. Masahiro Karasawa, Director of National Crafts Museum in Japan. Mr. Karasawa was born in Nagoya, Aichi Prefecture. He holds a graduate degree in fine arts from the Aichi University of the Arts. After working as a curator at the Aichi Prefectural Ceramic Museum, he accepted a post as a curator for the National Museum of Modern Art in Tokyo in 2003. And he became the director of the crafts division of that museum in 2010. He assumed his current post as the director of the National Crafts Museum in 2020. Now, the other speaker today is Mr. Tsunekazu Ishihara, president and CEO of the Pokemon Company. He was born in Toba City in Mie Prefecture in 1957. He graduated from the University of Tsukuba Graduate School of Art and Design in 1983. He was involved in the development of various video games as a game producer before founding Creatures Inc. in 1995. In 1996, Mr. Ishihara produced Pokemon Red and Green, which became the basis for all subsequent Pokemon-related products, and after that, became the producer for all Pokemon video games. In 1998, he founded Pokemon Center Company Limited, which is now the Pokemon Company, and he became the president and representative director there. Currently, he oversees brand management for all Pokemon products, including video games, trading card game, videos, and applets. Today, who is a very special moderator, is Ms. Susan Hirasuna, anchor and reporter of KTTV for Fox 11 Los Angeles. She's a Los Angelino, born in Encino, raised in Simi Valley, and graduated from the University of Southern California. For more than 2 decades, she anchored the weekend news and reported for Fox 11. Susan's work has been recognized by the Los Angeles Emmy Awards, the Golden Mikes, and New England Emmy Awards. In March 2012, she was invited to Japan by Foreign Press Center of Japan. During her visit there, she visited the regions devastated by the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami, and reported on recovery and rebuilding efforts there a year after the major disasters. And the translator today is David Neptune. So now the floor is yours.
So let's just start with what came first, the chicken or the egg, which is basically, we know when Pokemon started, but when did the artists decide that they wanted to be a part of something that would create those amazing objects that we saw down in the gallery space?
工芸もポケモンもともに日本から生まれた創作物です。共にものづくりを追求している、そんな存在として、いつかは巡り合う運命にあったと私は思ってまして、それが今一番いいタイミングで融合できた。それがこの、展覧会ポケモン×工芸展だと思っています。
So Pokemon and Japanese crafts are both born in Japan, and I knew that they would meet one day, and that's what you see here today now as this exhibition.
ポケモンは27年前にビデオゲームからスタートしました。で、実は私は大学の時にですね、アート&クラフトと ミクストメディアを専攻していました。
Pokemon started 27 years ago as a video game, and actually in college I majored in arts and crafts and mixed media.
ポケモンというビデオゲームはある意味ミクストメディアの延長線上にあって、そしてこの度27年の歳月を経てやっとクラフトまでたどり着いた、それが私の印象です。
And I feel that through Pokemon really is an extension of mixed media, and I think through these 27 years of science, I think now they're finally arrived with Japanese craft.
Well, Mr. Ishihara, before I move on, can I just ask, did you get what you expected? Did you envision what we see now in those objects, in the craft?
それはですね、私が期待していた想像以上のものが出来上がって、私自身たくさんの発見がありました。
It has actually far exceeded my expectations, and I made so many discoveries through this exhibit.
All right, so moving on to Mr. Karasawa. So when you got the proposal from the company, from Pokemon Company, what was your process? How did you see satisfying that request?
そうですね、最初に、株式会社ポケモンさんからお話をいただきました。工芸と何かできないだろうか。ポケモンとっていうのはありました。
So my first reaction when the Pokemon Company brought this idea to me to collaborate with crafts, I thought,
でも実は私事なんですけども、その時単身赴任をしていました。
However, at the time, I was working in the city and my family lived outside of the city.
子供とのコミュニケーションはポケモン GO でした。
And my communication was through Pokemon Go with my children.
でポケモンを捕まえると交換したりして、それが唯一のこの親子のコミュニケーションでした。
So we would trade Pokemon when we caught different ones, and that was the only communication that we had at the time.
ということはポケモンを通して工芸を見せることができたら、もしかしたらいろんな人と出会えるんではないかな、そんなふうに思いました。
So I thought if we're able to show crafts through Pokemon, maybe we can have a whole another, set of people that we can reach.
ただ、展覧会やりますと館内、工芸館の中で話はしたんですけども、工芸館の職員もどうしてポケモンなのっていう声がしばらくありました。
And so we decided as the craft museum, the National Craft Museum, to do this exhibit. However, there were employees at the museum that were still asking, so why Pokemon?
でも私はポケモン GO を見せながら、こういう面白さがあるんだよって、それだけを伝えてここまで来ました。
And I would show them my phone with Pokemon Go, and I would say, well, it's this good. So that's how we got to where we are now.
でも結果的にはとても素晴らしい展覧会になっていると思います。
And as a result, I think it's a really fantastic exhibit.
I don't think anybody would say otherwise. But Mr. Karasawa, so did you choose the artists, or how did you decide which 20 artists would be included in this exhibit?
今回の展覧会、20名の作家に作品を作ってもらいました。合計が72点になるんですけども、その20人を選んだのは、私たちと実はポケモンさん、株式会社ポケモンさんも入っていただいているんですね。
So there's 72 pieces of art made by 20 different artists in this exhibit, and it wasn't just us, actually. We also had folks from the Pokemon Company with us select the 20 artists.
美術館側が選ぶ作家っていうのは結構マニアックなんです。
And the ones that we tended to choose were the ones that were pretty obscure or pretty different somehow.
あまりにも深く考えすぎてマニアックになってしまうんですよ。
So we tended to think so deeply about, what we wanted to do that it kind of becomes unrelatable or something.
その時にキラッと光る意見を出してくださったのがポケモン社さんでした。
And there was a wonderful opinion from the Pokemon Company at this time.
でそのポケモン社さんとのやり取りの中でこの20名が決まりました。
And that's how we chose the 20 artists that you see in the exhibit.
And Mr. Ishihara, if I can ask, did you envision it having the various medium that we saw in the exhibit?
私が想像していたよりも工芸の領域は広かったです。私が勉強していたものよりも広いものがたくさんあって驚きました。
It was definitely a wider perspective than I expected to see, a wider range of pieces of art than I expected to see, wider than anything I had studied in college.
Absolutely. All right, we have some beautiful slides too. So for those of you who have not yet visited the gallery, we can start talking about the exhibit itself. And it's divided into three parts. There's appearance, stories, and life. But what are the meanings behind the fact, this is actually to Mr. Karasawa, that there is those categories?
今回の展覧会、3つのパートに分かれています。
So this exhibit is split into 3 parts.
でこの3つのパートも悩みに悩んで3つになりました。
And there was a lot of thought that went into selecting these categories.
3つだった時もあり、2つだった時もあり、また3つに戻り、また2つになり、また3つになりました。
There was a time when it was just 2, and then we went to 3, and then we went back to 2 again, and then we finally landed on 3.
結果的に姿、これはポケモンのフォルムを楽しむ、簡単に言うとそういうことになります。
You enjoy the form of the Pokemon in that one.
物語、これはポケモンとの出会い、その後の交流を楽しむ。
And then in stories, you enjoy sort of the interaction with Pokemon.
暮らし、ポケモンとともに生活を楽しむ、その3つのパートにしました。
And then in life, you get to sort of enjoy interaction and seeing the lifestyle of the Pokemon. So those were the 3 categories.
これ本来であれば唐沢さんに全部解説してもらった方が正確なんですが、ポケモンの立場から作品を解説するというのにちょっとトライしてみたいと思います。
Normally, I think he would explain all of these pieces, but I have the honor of taking that role today.
この、おそらく入り口で一番目立っていたのが吉田太一郎さんの作品だと思います。
And I think the one that really stands out is Taiichiro Yoshida's pieces at the entrance.
彼はですね、EV とその進化系を作りました。
And he created Eevee and the evolution of Eevee.
彼が、ポケモン図鑑に書いてあるサイズにとことんこだわりまして、全く同じ大きさで作るということを決めました。
He was absolutely adamant about the size of the creature that was in the Pokemon dictionary, and so he decided to make it exactly accurate to scale.
そのことが彼をとても苦しめました。
And that really tortured him.
彼が一番大変だった作品はブースターですね。はい。
And the one that he really had a difficult time with was Flareon.
ただですね、創作意欲は高く、この後 EV のその他の進化系を全部作りたいと先日オファーしてきました。
And recently, he actually ended up saying that he wanted to do all of the evolved forms of Eevee, so that may be the next thing.
ね。これは本当になんか色っぽささえ感じるね、シャワーズですね。
The Vaporeon, I love this one too. It's even like almost sexy a little bit as well.
はい、じゃあ次の葉山さんの作品ですが、この壺とそして大皿なんですけど、この右側の左側ですね、ポケモン・オブ・ザ・ユニバースと書いてある神羅万象ポケモン図と言ってますが、こちらに彼はですね500以上のポケモンを超絶技巧で書き上げています。
And so on the left, you'll see here the vase that was created. There's 500 Pokemon that are inscribed in this, all by hand, of course, and then the large plate that you see, the large bowl over here that you see as well.
金沢では数を一生懸命数える人がいました。
And in Tokyo, there were many people who were counting each Pokemon to see if that was true.
ただですね、すべてのポケモンを数えることができません。
However, you can't count them all
なぜなら壺の底にもポケモンがたくさん描かれているからです。
because there are many Pokemon on the bottom side of of the vase as well.
次の、水田さんの作品いきましょうか。彼のですね超絶技巧の均衡ですね。で彼はですね全ての関節を自在に動かすことができるというすごい金属彫刻の作家です。
The metal work by Haruo Mitsuta was really amazing, and all of the metal pieces are actually articulating, so they can actually move as well.
ですからこちらのギャルドスなんかは支えがないとぐにゃぐにゃになります。
And so, without the support rods that you see for Gyarados, it would be, really flimsy as well.
彼はこれまで自然界に存在するものしか作ってきませんでした。
Up until now, he had only created based on nature and creatures that we see in the wild.
ですから自然界に存在しているのかとは言い難いポケモンを作るのには相当の決意がいったようです。
So I think the decision for him to, as an artist, decide to make something that doesn't exist in the natural world was actually a really big decision for him to make.
次の作品ですね。はい。これは福田徹さんの作品ですが、これはすべて木でできている木工の象眼という技法で作られています。
A technique called Zogan was used for this piece, which is all wood. The entire thing is made of wood.
この鳳凰は圧巻ですけれども、次のページのアゲハントとアリアドス、このポケモンたちが、彼の真骨頂といいますか、生活の中にポケモンが存在していて、ある意味こちらは畳の上に雲がいる感じっていうものが全部彫刻で作られています。
So the after rain piece over here, feels so realistic, and then to also see a creature on the tatami mat is also something that I think feels very Japanese and feels very realistic.
今のが姿、形を楽しむカテゴリーですが、次に物語、ストーリーを楽しむポケモンたちとして、これは池田輝正さんの螺鈿ですけれども、これ作品としてはものすごく小さいんですが、ぜひ会場にあるビデオを見てください。どんなふうにして作っているのか。僕がねこれ一番ポケットに入れて持って帰りたい作品ナンバーワンなんですね。
This is so we're moving on to the stories category now, and a really impressive work that I really hope you see in person because it's much smaller than you think it would be. It's the number one item that I would love to put in my pocket and go home with.
小さいんですけどものすごい高くて、この前彼ニューヨークで展覧会されていて、とても買えない値段で展示されてました。
It's very small but very expensive. He was doing an exhibit in New York, and the price was something much too high for me to buy.
これは、さらに、モンスターボールと、こちらは初期のポケモン赤緑の3種類のポケモンが、描かれています。
And so we have our Pokeball here on the right, and we also have from Pokemon Red and Green the Tea Caddy over here.
こちらが池本和美さんの作品ガラス工芸ですけれども、私がこれすごく嬉しかったのはポケモンソード&シールドを彼は最後までプレイしていただきまして、そこで出会ったポケモン、仲間にしたポケモンと自分との物語をこのような作品としてまとめたんだとおっしゃってくれました。
Our artist here, Kazumi Ikemoto, played all the way to the end of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and he really made a story of the parts that he really enjoyed in the adventure that he went on through that game.
And David, before we move on, let me just hold on this slide for a little bit because I did have a conversation. So I learned a little bit about this art pieces and the fact that not only did he go all the way to the end playing the game, but it took him a little while to get to this place, and then that is what formed the artwork ultimately, and it's airbrush, and he uses his mouth to kind of spray the paint, if I'm not wrong. And it's just a remarkable end piece. So I'm kind of wondering, Mr. Kawasawa, maybe you could speak to the how remarkable the art is on these vases, on the glass.
そうですね、先ほどガラスという話がありました。
So we were talking about how this is made of glass.
何色もあるように見えるんですけども、これ色は8色ぐらいしか使っていないんですね。
It looks like there's many colors of these vases, but there's actually only 8 colors that are used.
少ない色数なんですけども、その色を何回も何回も塗ってはこう書き落とし、塗っては書き落とし、その繰り返しによって色の厚みをつけ、色の幅を出してるんですね。
And so what he does is he sprays on different colors many times. He'll spray it on and then take it off, spray it on and take it off. And so there will be like a depth to the color by doing it many times over and over.
ですからはっきりこう輪郭があるわけではなくて、その輪郭がぼけるようになっているところもまたこの作品の魅力になっています。
And part of the charm of this piece also is that there isn't like a very clear edge to the artwork, and that's very distinct of this style of art.
深みがあって奥行き感があって、そこにこう深みのある色合いがこう入っているので、ゆっくり楽しんでゆっくり見ていただくと、その良さがまたじわじわと見えてくると思います。
And so there's a lot of depth that you can see in it. So I think the longer you can spend with a piece like this, the more you'll start to feel the depth of the color and all of that.
And one more question. How does this fit into the stories category, and how successful were you in getting the artists to reflect story or the other two categories? But let's start with stories.
そうですね、先ほど石原さんがお話をされたように、この池本さんが、ゲームを通してその中に入っていった、その入っていった物語が、蒔絵のようにですね描かれているんですよ。
And so, like we mentioned, he played the video game all the way to the end, and so it's all the way around the vase, and so it's really that circular depiction of the story.
ですからポケモンと出会ってその後の交流、それが物語になってここに表されているっていうふうに見ていただくといいかなと思います。
So I think the idea is that he discovered Pokemon, had his own interaction with it, and then now is reflecting it in his art.
はい、あとちょっと付け加えると、彼は美術大学の教授の方でもあるんですけれども、ゲームに詰まるとですね、彼のお弟子さんの中でポケモンに詳しい人がいつも助けてくれたと言ってました。
And just to add one thing here, he was a professor at an art school, and whenever he would get to a challenging spot in the game and didn't know what to do, he would have one of his students work out that part for him so he could continue on the game.
ポケモンに対しては生徒はお弟子さんはものすごく厳しいと言ってました。
And he said that his students were very strict with him about how he was playing Pokemon.
Do we want to move to the next slide, please?
これはですね、坪島さんの作品ですけれども、ここ柄からアーマーガーというポケモンに、変形します。
And so this is Mr. Tsuboshima's work, and this one actually transforms from a Rookidee to the Corviknight that you see over here.
この変化する様はビデオにもなってますので、ぜひご覧になってください。
And that transformation is also in a video that you can check out in the gallery as well.
でこれはまさしくポケモンが進化するというコンセプトを見事に表現した金属彫刻であると思っています。
And I think this is a brilliant representation of how Pokemon evolve as a metal object.
これはですね、白間栄一さん、沖縄の相方の作家でございまして、テーマはですね、沖縄ということもありまして、ポケモンサンムーンに出てくるポケモンたちをテーマにした、ものです。
So this artist is from Okinawa, and he is a Aigata style artist, and so he used that style for his Pokemon kimono, as you see here.
私の中では一番身にまといたいものであり、なんか一番気分が上がりそうな感じがするんですよね。
And this one personally is the one I'd most like to wear, and is also something that I think would really cheer you up if you wear it.
はい、ぜひ唐沢さんにもコメントをお願いしたいと思います。
そうですね、物語の中にこのポケモン入ってるんですけども、実は暮らしの中にも入ってるポケモンとも言える、ポケモンの作品とも言えるんですね。
So this one is in stories, but it's also really part of life as well, I think,
今身にまとうという話がありました。はい。
as it's something that we wear on our bodies.
沖縄の紅型という非常に伝統的な技術が使われています。
And this is a traditional technique used called bingata in Okinawa.
伝統的な中にあるんですけども、この白間さんはそれを打ち破ろうとしてかなり苦労しました。
And though it is within tradition, or it comes from tradition, the effort by the artist was really to burst through that sort of way of creating.
模様の大きさ、色数、いろんな縛りがあるんですけども、それを乗り越えてこの作品を作りました。
I think there's many thoughts on the types of patterns and how many pieces of different aspects there should be in it, and so he really overcame a lot to create this piece.
Well, let me just ask Mr. Kawasawa about under the category of life, you showed the kimono, but is there something else that you would point to say that's in the life category?
桂森人さんの作品になるんですけども、桂さんは彫金の重要無形文化財保持者、いわゆる人間国宝になります。
And so this artist, Katsura Morihito, is a living national treasure.
人間国宝ということは、日本の宝になるんですけども、
And so that means this person is really a treasure to Japan.
金属彫刻でもう高度な技術を持っている方。
And he has a very advanced skill in sculpting metalwork.
いいおじいちゃんなんですけども、
And he's pretty old.
ですからポケモンのポの字も知らなかった。
He didn't know the letter P in Pokemon.
ピカチュウはポケモンですかっておっしゃったんですね。
He asked me, "Is Pikachu Pokemon?"
その方がポケモン図鑑を見て、これなら作れるって言ったのがこの帯留めとブローチのブラッキーなんですね。
And so the one thing that he said he could make is what we see here, Umbreon clasps that he thought he could make based on the Pokemon encyclopedia.
この黒い色は日頃桂さんが使っている銅合金の色だったんです。
And the color, this black that you see here, is really the color of the artwork that he regularly uses.
銅に金を混ぜて加工することによってこの黒い色が出るんですね。
And how they get that is adding gold to copper and sort of combining this in order to create this color.
でその合金を作って叩いて、単金で叩いてボディを作りました。
And it was an all handmade process of creating the center part as well.
一枚の板から作るんですよ。
And it's all made from one sheet of metal.
Amazing.
そこに金色の輪っかを今度ははめ込んだんです。
And then there was this gold ring that was then placed in the artwork.
銅合金のボディを削ってそこに金の輪っかをはめ込んだ、そういう作品なんですね。
And so there's the base layer, which is that composite metal material that we mentioned, and then he perfectly placed the gold onto that.
この世界も非常に伝統的な世界になりますので、やっていいこととやっていけないことがありました。
And because this is a very traditional art form as well, there were things that were allowed and things that were not allowed.
実は真ん中の作品、ブラッキーが寝ている作品なんですけども、
And the one in the middle where Umbreon is sleeping,
月光を浴びた姿を、金で表現をしているんですけども、金の幅は伝統的なスタイルからいくとタブーなんですね。
and this is sort of the representation of the moonlight that is reflecting on Umbreon, but the width of that gold is actually a taboo width for this traditional art form.
人間国宝がタブーを犯していいのかって悩んだそうなんですよ。
And so he, as a living national treasure, had this conflict in his mind of, is it okay to do something that is taboo for this?
でも月光を浴びた姿を表現するにはもうこれしかなかった。
But this was the only way to represent the moonlight.
でもこれをやったことによって新しい表現、新しい見せ方が見つかったっておっしゃってるんですね。
But thanks to this, he was able to come up with a new way of expressing through his artwork.
That leads us to the next question. There are so many details that could get lost if you go by too quickly. You've given us some things to look for. What else? And perhaps Mr. Ishihara wants to take that question. What other details do you want us to pay attention to that might be subtle after the first look?
まだまだたくさんあるんですけど、例えばその模様の中に潜んでいて、見つけてくれって言ってるポケモンを探す。これはすごくエキサイティングだと思います。
There's so many things that I'd like to mention, but one is that there's within patterns there are hidden Pokemon that you can find.
あと、今回紹介を僕しませんでしたけど、私が一番感動した作品は増本さんという方が作られている作品で、炎によって炎ポケモンを作り上げる、そういう陶芸の作品です。
And one of the pieces that really moved me, we didn't show here in the slide, but it's by an artist named Masumoto, and that piece was made by, it was using fire to represent fire of the Pokemon.
ですから、皆さんの好きな、リザードン、チャリザードや、ファイヤー、いろんなポケモンが、炎ポケモンが、炎の薪の窯で焼かれたことによって、炎らしい壺に仕上がっていると、そういう作品です。
And that piece of Lizard Dawn, it was really created with fire from wood fired, basically, in a kiln. So that one really comes from fire and represents fire. So
まだまだありますけど、とりあえずそんなところで。はい。
there's many more, but that's the one that pops out of mind now.
And does Mr. Kawasawa, do you have any that is your favorite to tell these people what to look for?
そうですね。工芸素材が持つこの独特の質感や素材感があります。
There is a very distinct texture that a lot of these craft materials hold.
焼き物、金属、そしてガラス、いろんな素材があっていろんな質感があります。
There's ceramic, there's metal, there's glass, so many materials and so many textures.
その素材感が作家が持っている技術技法でさらにパワーアップしていきます。
And the techniques of these artists really makes these textures come to life.
そのパワーアップ姿っていうか質感が今回の展覧会にたくさん見ることができます。
And you can really see that representation a lot in this exhibit.
ポケモンは1000種類以上今います。
And there are over 1,000 Pokemon now.
工芸素材もたくさんあって技術技法もたくさんあります。
And there are many materials used in crafts and many techniques as well.
素材と技術技法が掛け合わされると多分1000を超えるでしょう。
And so I think there's more than 1,000 if you look at the different materials and different techniques that are used in crafts.
いろんなポケモンが工芸素材で表現できると思います。
And so I think that means that we can really express all kinds of Pokemon through craft techniques.
今回の展覧会はその72点を見ることができます。
And so this time you're able to enjoy 72 out of the 1,000.
How has this project advanced the field of crafts, of koge?
そうですね。工芸って皆さん普段に使うものから美術館で見るようなものまで幅広くご存知だとは思うんですけども、
I think many of you are aware of, crafts and have maybe seen crafts before in museums.
でも工芸って分かってても深く考えることはあまりなかったんではないかなって思うんですね。
And maybe you haven't really had the chance to think deeply about them until now.
あまりに身近にありすぎて普段に使っているものなので。
Because at times these crafts are so close to us that they're just daily objects that we use all the time.
でも美術館に入って工芸ってなると、 ある人が作り出した作品なんだっていうふうに思うと思うんですよ。
And however, when you actually get to see them in an environment like the museum, then you actually get to think, oh, this is a piece
そう
of
い
art.
う幅があるものが実は工芸なんですね。
And I think that's the sort of wide range, the capability of crafts.
そういった工芸の楽しみ方を今回の展覧会はさらに教えてくれました。
And I think that's what this exhibit taught me is that there's many ways to enjoy crafts.
使えるものもあり、見て楽しむものもあり、欲しいものもありで
There
すね。
there might be things that you can use, there might be things that you would look at, or there might be things that you want to take home with you.
Mr. Ishihara, was that your intention to see the world of crafts expand or be further developed?
今回の、作品数多く見て、ポケモンはおそらくその工芸の魅力というものをある程度掘り起こすことができたんではないかなと思っています。
I think seeing all of these pieces, I am confident that Pokemon was able to really kind of bring out some of the charm and the incredible nature of crafts.
しかしそれ以上に、工芸は、ポケモンの新しい魅力というものを、いろんな角度から引き出してくれたとも思っています。
And I also think that Pokemon crafts were able to actually bring out a new charm of Pokemon from various different angles.
先ほど唐沢さんからポケモンは1000種類以上いますからねっておっしゃってくれたように、まだまだ、始まったばかりで、ポケモンは151種類からスタートして、今1000種類を超えてますけど、この工芸もですね、これからどんどん作品点数、そういうものを増やしていって、ポケモンの数に、迫るようなですね、そういう大きな、展示もしたいですね。
And we just mentioned that there's 1,000 Pokemon. I think the crafts are really just getting started. In the beginning, there were 151 Pokemon. So just looking at that, it's very exciting to think about where the crafts and Pokemon collaboration can go from here.
How important is it that the second exhibit would be here in the city of Los Angeles?
今回やはりジャパンハウスロサンゼルスさんの、ご尽力と働きかけで、ロサンゼルスでやることに非常に価値があり、場所としても素敵なところだなというのが今回こちらで開催させていただいた最大の理由です。
Yeah, the greatest reason is really the support and the hard work put in by Japan House and this beautiful space that they were able to host us in. So that was our main reason for bringing it here to Los Angeles.
日本だけではやはり多くの方に見ていただけなかっただろうと思うんですね。それもこのロサンゼルスであれば世界各国からここへ来ていると思います。
I think in Japan, the attendance in some ways would have been limited. Here in Los Angeles, we get visitors from all over the world.
で見たら皆さん帰りますよね。国へ。
And when these people see the work, then they're going to go back to their countries, right?
感動を持ち帰ってそこでまたいろんな方に喋っていただいて、そうするとそのポケモンの素晴らしさ、日本の工芸の素晴らしさ、またその2つの融合の素晴らしさを伝えていただけるんではないかなって、そんなふうに思います。
And I feel that, everybody will go home and they'll talk about how wonderful this is. They'll talk about how wonderful Pokemon are and how wonderful crafts are and how the combination is fantastic. So that's really, I think, what makes it special.
Bravo. To both of you gentlemen, I would think that you both have different missions or the end result of this kind of exhibit. With the Pokemon Company might have one goal, and then for the Craft Museum might have a different goal. So I'm curious what that would be in light of this traveling exhibit.
冒頭でお話しした通り、ポケモンが工芸と結びつくっていうのは私にとっても一つの大きな目標でもありましたので、ただこのまんまポケモン工芸展が1回行われたので、次は別のコンセプトで展覧会を開こうとか、そういうふうには実はあまり考えていませんで、 このポケモンが151種類から1000種類を超えて増えていったように、この工芸展のサイズやクオリティがどんどん上がっていくと、そういうことを目標にしたいと思っています。
I think my goal simply was really to just create this connection between Pokemon and crafts. And now that has been done, it's not that I want to go and try something different. I think this is fantastic. And so to just keep doing this and increasing the quality and the number of Pokemon that are displayed, I think would be a fantastic goal for me in the future.
少し硬い話になるんですけども、
This might be kind of a stiff way of thinking or a not interesting topic. I'm not sure where he's going here.
工芸と美術、美術と工芸、工芸って下に見られることが多いんですね。
When you think of crafts and art, oftentimes crafts are kind of seen as lower than art.
この仕事をしていると、そういう体験をすることが多々あります。
And when you work the way I do, I have that experience very often.
でも工芸って本当は素晴らしいんですよっていうのをいつも伝えたいと思っているんですね。
But I always think I really want to communicate how incredible crafts are.
でその時にポケモンさんから話をいただいた時に、ポケモンの力を借りたらいいのかなって思ったんですよ。
And so when the Pokemon company reached out, I thought, oh, maybe we could borrow the power of Pokemon for this.
ですからカミングアウトするとちょっと下心がありました。
And so really kind of coming out in this moment, that's my honest thought of that.
ただ私の立場からしますと、ポケモンも工芸もその身の回りにあるものの中にその魅力や美を見出していくっていう意味においては非常に近しいものだと思っていたんですね。
I think from my perspective, I would also say that Koge and Pokemon both are kind of a medium that you find the charm in the daily, interaction that you have with it.
ポケモンはその現代アートとのコラボレーションなども試みていますけれども、今回のこのクラフトとのコラボレーションというのは一番強い親和性を感じました。
We also do collaborations with modern art as well, but really this collaboration with these fantastic crafts has been really strong in my opinion.
I don't know if it's possible to go back to the first slide with, I believe the character is Jolteon, but the detail is just so incredible, and I was privy to some information about how there are so many different pieces and how these crafts were created. And I don't know if either one of you wants to speak to it. I understand that the tongue on Flareon is the only thing that is the original color of the copper, and then from there, there's a process to get it to the end result.
そうですね。工芸素材、銅板を使った作品なんですね。
These are very small copper plates that are used.
で、銅はいろんな色に薬品を使って変えることができます。
And using chemicals, you can change copper in many ways.
おそらくそれは常に日頃から銅素材を使っている作家だからこそ、そういうヒントっていうのかアイデアが生まれるんですね。
And I think the artist was able to have this idea because this is the kind of work this is the material that he works with all the time.
ですからただそれだけを作ろうっていうのではなくて、そこにその人が使っている素材があって技術技法が必ずあるんです。
So it's not just creating a cool piece of art, but it's really using the material and the techniques that have been developed over a long time by these artists.
でも今回はそれだけではないですね。
But that's not all.
例えばブースター、炎ポケモン。
For example, Flareon.
ディティールを見ていただくと炎の形をしています。
You'll see that each one is shaped like a flame.
サンダース、
And
雷ポケモン、
Jolteon,
雷の形をしています。
which has the shape of lightning.
で次のページのシャワーズ、
And the next page, Vaporeon,
水ポケモン、
is a
水
water
の
Pokemon.
波紋の形をしているんですね。
So it looks like ripples. Each piece looks like a ripple.
作家がポケモンを勉強してそのストーリー自分が感じたものも全てここに注ぎ込んでいるんです。
So the artists really studied the Pokemon and put everything that they know about their work into creating these pieces.
そういうふうに作り出しているのでおそらく皆さんは知らず知らずにその凄さを浴びているんですよ。
So because they're created in this way, even if you're not fully consciously aware, you're receiving all of this, forethought and effort that's put into each of these pieces.
Can we speak to the artists? I understand that some of them were younger and were quite familiar with Pokemon, and a couple were on the older side and needed to be sort of better educated.
そうですね。ポケモン、若い方はよく知っている。で、お年の方はあまり知らないっていうのはあったんですけども、でも今回20名の作家さんたちがもう真剣勝負でポケモンに取り組んだ。ですからそれが一点一点の作品に表現されていると思います。
I think, like you said, there are people who were familiar and people who were not familiar, but really the 20 artists took this task very seriously and did their absolute best to create something that was very unique and beautiful. And I think that's what you see here in the exhibit.
あえて言うと、コンテンポラリーの作品をお作りになる作家ではなくて、工芸作家だからこういった作品を生み出すことができたんではないかなって思うんですね。
And I think they were able to create these pieces because they're not contemporary artists, they're craft artists, and they chose to make these kind of contemporary pieces.
すごく真摯に向き合って作品を作るということをしていただきました。
So they really just faced their artwork straight on and created these magnificent pieces.
ですから今回の20人の作家さんたちにはすごく感謝をしています。
So I'm really grateful to all of our artists.
And I'm not an artist, so I have no way to figure out how to conceptualize this. But of course, it's pointed out to me that in a video game, things are they're only 2D. And to a certain extent, the artist needed to imagine or come up with their own version of the texture, especially for this kind of situation in 3D, this sculpture here, this craft here.
それこそ液晶画面の向こう側にいるポケモンですよね。
Pokemon is supposed to exist on a screen, right? And so
ですからそれを3次元にしようと思うと相当悩んだと思うんですよ、作り手は。
So I think they really spent a lot of time figuring this out, how to create this three-dimensional object.
ですから工芸館で展覧会を開催した時に
And so when we held the exhibition at the Craft Museum,
作家さんたちが集まって論議をしてたんですよ。
the artists had all gotten together and they were having a discussion.
もうそれだけ真剣に作品を作った。ですから自分の考え、コンセプト、工夫で残念だったところ、いろんなものをお互いが話し合ってるんですね。
And so they all, were taking it that seriously. They were having this discussion to try and figure out where their concept is working and where it's not. And they really bounced ideas off of each other to try and figure out how to do what you see.
そういう姿ってあまり実は見たことがなくて、
And I had never really seen that before, actually.
ですからそれだけ作家さんたちはもうドキドキしながら作品を作り出して美術館に送り込んだんですよ。
And so they were really nervous. Every artist, I think, was very nervous as they sent their pieces in to the museum to be viewed.
Brilliant.
はい
Okay, this is an opportunity for us to take some questions.
Hi, I was wondering, once the artists were chosen, if they were given any sort of guidelines, and if so, what those guidelines were, or if they were just free to do what they'd like.
そうですね、自由ではありません。
It was not total freedom.
いい監修を経て、作品は出来上がります。
There was a very strict reviewing process.
ですから作家さんも自分の技術やこれまで培ってきたものと、ポケモンが支持するさまざまな慣習の中で一生懸命頑張るという日々が2年以上続いていたと思います。
So it really was over 2 years of work by these artists where they used all of their techniques, all their knowledge, and then taking all of the guidelines that they were getting from the Pokemon Company to create all of these pieces.
Next question. There was a gentleman right behind.
Yes, with over 1,000 Pokemon, how do you decide which artist gets which Pokemon? Is it something that you decide or something that they choose based off the medium and like the work that they do?
作家さんたちが取り組みたいポケモンがまずあって、でそれらがどういうふうに組み合わさると面白いかと考えるので、我々からこのポケモンでやってくださいといったことはありません。
Each artist had a Pokemon that they wanted to work with, and then we would look at the balance of all of the different Pokemon that the different artists wanted to work with and decide that way. But we never told an artist, this is the Pokemon that you need to create.
最初みんなピカチュウでやりたいと言ったらどうしようかと思っていったんですけど、そういうことはありませんでした。
At first, I was worried that everybody would want to do Pikachu, but that was not the case.
なんかむしろピカチュウを避けているような、そういう選択をした作家さんたちが多かったように思います。
It felt much like everybody was avoiding Pikachu, actually, and chose other Pokemon.
Gentleman in the proper T-shirt here with Pikachu.
I have a Pikachu shirt on myself. Speaking of that, is there going to be any merchandise with some of the artwork on shirts so we can wear and show our affiliation with our favorite Pokemon character from this exhibit?
今回は極めて少ないんですが、一番おすすめしたいのがこの図録です。
There's very few things on sale this time around, but what I really recommend is this book.
48ドル。
It's $48. It is half Japanese and half English. I really recommend this catalog. So please take one home with you.
All right, there's another question, I think.
Was there a certain Pokemon that was not in the exhibit you would have liked to see?
いや、私は発見と驚きばかりでどんなポケモンを選んでくるのかをいつもワクワクしたいので、なんかこのポケモンやってほしいのにっていうのはあんまりないですね。
I actually really just enjoy the discovery and the excitement that comes with having them choose, so I don't really have one that I would like to see necessarily.
むしろなんでこのポケモンを選んだんですかっていうそういう質問を作家にしたいと、そういう作り方をしてほしいなと思います。
I'm happy for them to pick, any Pokemon of their choosing, so that I can ask them actually, well, why did you choose this one? So that's how I feel.
Any other question on this side before we go back? One other question here.
Has this process ever influenced your perception of Koge art or Japanese craft in any way while you were kind of discovering what new things that the artist could create with Pokemon?
はい、私はもともと先ほど大学時代にクラフトをやっていたと言いましたけれども、それは主に陶芸とかそういったものでしたので、今回の漆とか螺鈿とか染色とかそういった領域でこんなに奥深い工芸の世界があるんだということはたくさん勉強したと思っています。
It's definitely something that has changed my perspective. Like as I said, I studied crafts in college, and I was mainly doing things like ceramics and that sort of thing. But discovering urushi, the lacquer work, or raden, like the mother of pearl, shiny material that was used, and the dyeing and weaving that is done, it was just a really eye-opening experience just to see all the different mediums that were used.
So I believe we have time for one more question, maybe two. I'm looking for my time cues here. So over on this side.
So yeah, my question is, after the art tour is over, what is the fate that awaits these wonderful art pieces?
この作品はですね、すべてポケモンさんのところに行きます。
They are all going to the Pokemon Company.
いやいやいやいや、そういうことではなくて、一応この展覧会が世界中を巡回できるように、作品が散逸しないように、我々の方で、持たせていただいていると、そういう意味でございます。
はい、
No,
それ
hold
は
on. That's not necessarily true. He's saying that we're going to hold on to the pieces, take very good care of them so that they can tour the world and go to other exhibits.
希望は世界中を巡回したいと思ってます。
So I hope that it'll be a rotating, a touring exhibit all around the world.
All right, that's going to wrap us up for right now. I'm terribly sorry. I think we're out of time.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.